welcome to our weekly blockchain gaming news roundup from blockchaingamer.biz. It's Friday, the 24th of January. I am your host, Jenny Jordan, and with me is John Jordan. Hi, John. How are you this week?
Good.
Good.
Okay. Made it through the week.
Back from the conference. So John was out at PT Connect London this week, where he revealed our top 50 blockchain gaming companies of 2025. Exciting stuff. So that's now also gone live on the website if you want to go and check that out. And that is also the headline we're starting off with. So tell us, I suppose, how you came about choosing the 50 companies you chose and why number one is number one. That's the most interesting.
As I sort of explained it at the conference, it's one of those things, putting together these lists. I've been doing this for, the first one I actually did was 2009, which was the top iPhone game makers for Pocket Gamer. So obviously the idea of having a list is not particularly novel. But I think having the process of sort of doing it and sort of working out in your head how you're sort of comparing what can be very different sort of companies to each other. I think particularly when it comes to blockchain, in the past we've sort of focused a little bit sort of wider, I guess, in terms of like infrastructure companies, and even this year, this list we had some infrastructure companies and some blockchain sort of developers. I don't think we had any investors this year. I think in previous years we've had investors, but I think this is the fourth time we've done a blockchain list, and I think that becomes easier over time because obviously there's sort of more companies, but I think the high quality companies become more obvious. I think actually last year as well, because last year was quite a difficult year for most most games companies and most blockchain games companies. That also makes it a little bit easier because you're not necessarily. You don't have sort of, lots of companies whose tokens have all bombed up and that may be through speculation or maybe through sort of shilling or underhand stuff, and it becomes quite hard to work it out. So actually last year I think was quite a sort of good year to put together a list. Obviously, it's sort of me putting together a list, so there is some level of, subjective, objective sort of tension going on there. So to an extent, if anyone else put together a different list. Obviously, more generally, the other way of putting together lists, there's two other ways of putting together a list, really. One is a committee. So you just ask loads of people and you sort of, whoever gets the most votes becomes number one, which is, I suppose, how they put together the top 100 albums of all times, or the sort of things they do in culture. And those things definitely have their place, but generally they're quite boring. Generally, they don't change from year to year. Generally, a bit like the Oscars, the ones that you expect to win are going to win, and it's a bit dull. And with lists like this, I like to shake it up a little bit. Obviously, within the context of not just making stuff up for the sake of it, but in terms of someone who spends a lot of time or every day looking at this sort of stuff, I think I have as good a view as anyone. And my view is not necessarily whether the token's gone up or I think I play a lot of these games, so actually a lot of it is to do with what I think sort of the quality of the experience, which for blockchain games isn't just the game. Obviously, it's wider aspects of creating an economy and building infrastructure around that. So anyway, waffle. And the other thing I sort of always say is that I think the most useful way of looking at these lists is obviously from year on year, you can see if companies are going up or down. That's sort of interesting to see sort of like an arc of what's happening. But for people who know nothing about the space or very little about the space, which is obviously in terms of blockchain, most people, I think these sort of lists just provide a really good starting point of if you're vaguely interested in this sector, who are the top companies, and look at the top 10. And probably I would be you'd have to be quite into blockchain games to sort of know about all the companies that are on the list. Some of them are fairly obscure. So that's the way I think about it. Obviously, every company, you sort of see it on Twitter. Apart from the company who's number one, everyone's either annoyed they're not in the list at all, or they're annoyed that they're not necessarily annoyed that they're number 23, not number 37, but they're often annoyed that a company they think is really rubbish is a higher place than them. That's often sort of the thing you'll find That they,
Although I have to say, the response so far have been like quite humble. Companies are very happy just to be on there, and I mean, a lot of companies out there understand that they aren't the number one company in the industry, and so they are super thankful that they are number 30 or 27 or whatever.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the other thing is when it's a fairly small sort of nascent industry sector like we have now, everyone sort of mates a little bit, and everyone just understands we have to make the cake bigger, not fight over the size of the slice. So there's that nice sort of aspect of it, and there was back in the day of mobile games, when everyone was doing it 15 years ago. As the industry gets bigger, people become a bit more maybe arrogant's the wrong word, but that sort of thing happens, and people sort of you sort of lose some of that nice sort of friendliness. At least that's my experience in sort of the mobile space. And as these companies become massive, Supercell goes from 30 people to whatever 500 people.
I guess one of the big differences from sort of the mobile game space is that here you have a lot of companies. It's striking actually how many in the top 10 and generally on the list are. They don't just operate one game, or they've just not made like one smash hit game. They do loads of other stuff too. They have marketplaces, infrastructure, platforms, all that stuff. And so it's like Pixels is about the only game in there, I think, that are sort of just known for that one game. And then the rest of them have loads of other development stuff as well. So it's kind of more complex in a way, these companies, because you have to take that into account too. They're not just the number one is not just number one because they have the most popular or interesting game going.
But even in the case of Pixels, I don't think anyone, the Pixels as a game is not particularly interesting. So from a gaming point of view, the thing that's interesting about Pixels at the moment, particularly as we talk about quite a lot, is their real focus on getting play to earn to work and build this sort of effectively a sort of marketing network. It's almost like an ID system in reverse sort of thing. So as you say, blockchain games companies are interesting because they are taking they're not doing a game. They're taking a much broader view of the sort of the tech stack, the marketing stack, the investment stack, all that sort of is much more interesting from that point of view. Over time, that may change. I think as we get sort of single games becoming bigger and infrastructure becomes commoditized, then that sort of I don't think in 5 years' time we'll see necessarily. It won't be so exciting for people to say we're going to do our own blockchain because there'll just be so much infrastructure out there, and probably they'll all go back to Amazon again or whatever. But at the moment, there is definitely last year we definitely saw a lot. The meta was for game companies to announce they're doing their own blockchains because the infrastructure isn't quite there at the moment, and also you can sort of generate more sort of dynamism around your token or create a new token. So that's good for funding. Yeah. But anyway, to get on to
why
number
was,
one.
What was it in 2024 that made this company that's number one this year become number one? Because they climbed quite a few slots compared to 2024.
So the number one this year was a Proof of Play, the US company who I guess still are best known for Pirate Nation. So that's a fully on-chain game. It's been live, getting on 18 months, almost 2 years now. I think they said they update it every week, and they've done 100 updates. So that's sort of 2 years, isn't it? And it's it's sort of funny as when I had Amit from the company, the CEO, on the podcast, we sort of had not quite, well, maybe a disagreement that the game itself is not, like I said with Pixels, is not particularly sort of novel or exciting as a game. It's a pirate themed game. You can go and battle other players or PvP or PvE enemies, and that part of it is a turn-based sort of deck builder game. So you have cards like attack cards or defense cards and a certain amount of energy, and you just play until you win. But then there's like a crafting part. So you win these resources, wood, cotton, and iron are the sort of main resources. And then they've really started, this is only in the last sort of couple of months, really, you can really start to do a lot of crafting around that. So you have these crafting buildings that you have on your island, and you craft these different things. Then you level up your crafting bases to build more things. And then you have to you win different sort of templates and blueprints. And if you really go for it, you can start to build your own ships, or and there's a whole sort of economy sort of side of it as well. And I've played the game, I would say pretty much certainly every not every day last year, but for a lot of days last year, I've played that game quite a lot. And they launched their token, the pirate token, last year. That was sort of quite successful. They were one of the first people to do this sort of claim and stake mechanic where you claimed your tokens. They did a play to airdrop campaign, and you got your tokens, then you could stake them straight away and start earning points for another airdrop. So that sort of went quite well. Because they're a well-known team, they're sort of well-funded. They did Farmville for Zynga back in the day. So they understand about building social games and building and handling big infrastructure issues. So they're quite good. They're good from that point of view. And as you say, the other sort of the big, I think the thing that really sort of swung it in from that sense for them to be number one this year is they had this game that was quite successful. They've not really released figures, but I think it peaked at about 80,000 sort of DAUs, but they could have had more. One of the problems they had was their infrastructure. So it's a fully on-chain game, so just it's not a massively heavy-duty game with lots of transactions, but everything you do in the game is a transaction. So, so they were basically building on Arbitrum, the Ethereum L2. They built their own L3 that was called Apex, and they were running it on that. And through the play to airdrop campaign, they couldn't get enough. They couldn't get free players into the game. If you owned one of their NFTs, obviously you could play, but people just rocking in to try and get the airdrop, they hit capacity. So then they always sort of wanted to do infrastructure, but they had to sort of accelerate their plans because they were going through this growth spurt for this particular game. So they launched their other blockchain, which is called Boss, and obviously A, B, there'll be another one called C, beginning with C at some point. And they sort of accelerated their infrastructure plan. So they have these two blockchains running, and if you look at various dashboards that look at this sort of stuff, the most popular Ethereum-based L2s slash L3s are normally Apex, and then the base blockchain from Coinbase, and then Boss. Obviously, it goes up and down depending on what's going on, but these are just two very busy, very performant blockchains running this one game, and sort of as they were discussing that and various other infrastructure stuff they're building in the background, they were just sort of it's sort of become one of their memes now is sort of they are building the Amazon Web Services business for blockchain games. So we're starting to see that a bit more. There's two games that have announced they are using the proof of play sort of infrastructure. It seems like quite they're not necessarily running on those Apex or Boss blockchains. So it looks like one of them at least is running on Abstract, I think. So there's a way of sort of I think with L1 blockchains you sort of run everything on the L1 blockchain. As we start to
Gigaverse, is it?
Gigaverse, sorry, yeah. Gigaverse is one. So I think as we've seen with some blockchains, as we go to L1 and L2s, you can sort of break down what a blockchain actually does in terms of consensus and verification, all this sort of stuff. So you can run those on different layers. So it's sort of slightly more complicated than we were used to. But we're definitely seeing proof of play have a quite a popular game with which is actually on chain, and that means other people can build build stuff in that game. We're not seeing a lot of that yet, but they are starting to talk about having people coming in, third parties coming in and building within Pirate Nation.
Sovereign has launched something, haven't they? Like a mini game.
Who's that? Sorry,
Sovereign. I don't know.
Sovereign, yeah. Sovereign are very into that sort of stuff. So they're also building in Eve Frontier. So we're starting to see it's the fully on-chain sort of composability play starting to happen, and obviously they're doing this infrastructure stuff as well. So 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 I think on both levels. I mean, you could say on the game level, there's other companies who have sort of, I would say, had similar success in terms of a game, and there's other companies who are sort of building interesting infrastructure. But I don't think there's any company who are doing sort of both at the level they're doing it at. I mean, hopefully next year we'll have a game that's doing 1 million DAUs, or there's to be some other mechanic that will be sort of some other metric that will be more important than what we saw last year. But last year was what it was. So I'm pretty happy having come up with the list and thought about it. I'm pretty happy with that decision. They seem pretty happy with it as well. They tweeted it all out, so we're all happy. I think.
It's also worth mentioning that you're more than just an observer from the outside. You are very in the industry, like all of the excuse me,
Yeah.
all the time. You talk to these people regularly, a couple of times a year. You check in with, and you don't just sort of get your favorites because you get on with them socially, sort of thing. Maybe almost even you don't actually get on with them, but you admire and respect them for what they're doing professionally and their vision. You often sort of praise Luke Babakovsky for that, and David Johansson from Blocklords. And so I know I'd say Amit Mayan from Proof of Play is sort of up there amongst the sort of very reputable sort of visionaries in the space, and he just comes across as obviously with his record in Synca and Farmville and that stuff as well. So well done. I think I
would just say as well. I mean, I think more generally, when that all being about me, I think there is in both sort of games like Blocklords and Proof of Play and Pirate Nation. Actually, when I first started playing them, I wouldn't say I didn't get it, but in neither of those games was I like blown away by, wow, this is so amazing, which sometimes you sort of can be in games. And it really took time. It really took, just playing these things over and over, every day or, over months and years in both those games. I've been playing those games for over a year now, very regularly. And sort of, not being very good at those games to begin with, not really understanding. Even in Pirate Nation, I wouldn't say I'm at a very high level in terms of understanding all the sort of things you can do in that game. But over time, I think for the really good teams who have really thought about what they're doing and are experienced in making games, you over time you get to see what they're trying to do, and maybe it's not what what the audience would want now, and certainly in a game like Blocklords, which is a long way off where they sort of would want it to be fully featured and stuff. But you sort of get the more you play it, and sometimes the more you struggle with it and decide am I going to give up or no, I'm going to keep playing. You sort of get an understanding of what their long-term plan is. Not to say these games are going to be successful in the long term, but you get an idea of actually what they're trying to do. And the blockchain is much harder because with a normal game, you just you sort of craft it and you have much more control over it. Something goes wrong, you change it. With a lot of these blockchain games, you don't have that sort of quite that level of control just to quickly sort of change stuff because you have a whole economy underneath it. So it is much harder for them, and they have to go a bit slower. So I think that's the other interesting thing is it's very easy, I think, for people to, we see the sort of KOLs on Twitter, just whatever their hot thing of the week is, whatever tokens going live, they just sort of pile into it and then take their money and off they go. And there's a place for that, but that's definitely not what I try and do in these lists. That's definitely not sort of my personality for finding out what I think.
Paid or sponsored to
no, I'm going to say unfortunately not, but no.
No. So actually, whilst we're on the sort of theme of games you're playing or not playing, Soccerverse had their first season, not first season actually, the first live matches go live on the 18th of January this week. So no, it's not in the notes, but let's talk a little bit about that because you're a manager and your sons are signed up as managers and you've started sort of taking part in these bi-weekly matches now. So can you tell us just sort of first impressions of that?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so Soccerverse, I mean, that is a team who do pay me. I'm a consultant advisor with them, have been for a long time. So it's really good to finally have this game live on Polygon blockchain. So it's a football management sort of economic simulator, and every sort of move is a on-chain transaction. And we had 2 games now. We're into 2 games into the season. Season lasts for 6 months, and obviously by that stage you'll be, teams will win their leagues and teams will get relegated and promoted, all that sort of stuff. So there's obviously the football management side of things where you have your team and you pick your formation and you pick. There's different situations you can pick. So you can pick at a certain time of the game if you're losing, how do you want to change stuff. You can. It's quite granular. You can go into individual players and do you want to what's their tackling style or all that sort of stuff. It's based on real world players, so they have, I can't even remember how many. Is it 180,000? That's the number that comes to mind. But anyway, that's the global sort of database of professional football players, and it has where they play and how old they are, and it also then feeds into sort of a status, out of 100, how good are they? And because this is an economic simulator, they have they get paid wages, and the club has in-game money. And what we're already seeing quite quickly, actually, is once you become a manager, you can start transferring players. So you can, you go, my right back's rubbish. I want to sell him and get a better right back and start to see that sort of movement around. So that's sort of interesting. The other sort of funny thing is it's quite a slow game. So when we're used to maybe these sort of football management games where you can just run it at your own speed and just sort of play through and experience can be quite fast. This is like every Wednesday and every Saturday the games are played. They have cup games in the middle, but it's everyone's experiencing this at the same time. Around all around the world, and there's only one. Whatever football player you want to buy, so you can't just make a team with your favourite players because. Well, you could do, but it would cost you a ton of money because there's only one of each. You have to buy them. So it's interesting that it's the social aspect of people sort of playing and how that's going to sort of work out. And when you get further into the game, managers can be voted out if they're rubbish, or you want to manage a club. If you have enough resources, you can vote that manager out. And so that sort of interesting sort of social mechanisms are going to be what's happening. And it's sort of actually we're getting that a little bit this weekend because two of our sons have our managers and they're playing each other. So and unfortunately already one's top of the league and one's almost bottom of the league, so it could be a bit disastrous at 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon.
You can win that situation, can you? That's gonna be.
But it does sort of show this sort of it's quite a because it's a fairly sort of tight community of people who like these sort of games, and so there is sort of quite a lot of sort of advice going on and how do I do this and so very early days for Soccerverse, but it's launched well. So.
Good, right. So quite surprising news that came out this week. Surprising in the sense that Telegram has sort of spent 2024 building this kind of big momentum about mini games launching. And it's gotten games in that weren't only just deployed on the Ton blockchain. It was sort of games from any ecosystem, and now it's sort of signed an exclusivity deal with Ton Foundation. Obviously, Telegram and Ton are so very closely related. So. Which means that games on other blockchains will not be able to operate through Telegram. So, yeah, that's a little bit surprising, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, very surprising. So, yeah, as you say, they now have a deal that you can only use. It's called Ton Connect. That's the only tech you can use to if you want to connect a Telegram mini game to a blockchain, you have to use Ton Connect, which presumably means you can only connect to Ton. I did ask for a bit more specificity around that from the PR, and it wasn't terribly clear to me. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously this makes total sense for Telegram and Ton, as you say, which are basically the same company, although obviously legally separate. Telegram is now profitable because of Ton going live and all these play to airdrop things happening, and everyone getting a wallet. And Telegram is integrating Ton as its crypto. The only non-fiat crypto. The only cryptocurrency that works in the Telegram ecosystem is Ton. So their advertising network works. You get paid out in Ton tokens. If you want to advertise, you use Ton tokens. Obviously, you can just use fiat currency as well if you want to, credit cards and stuff. But in terms of cryptocurrency, it's all Ton based. So it sort of makes sense for those entities. Obviously, it's a bit frustrating for other companies who, for whatever reason, don't want to use the Ton blockchain, that they can't now use Telegram as a well, they can still use it. I guess you can still use it as a marketing sort of vector for your
Web 2 game.
So you could launch a Web 2 game on it, and you could even, I guess, get people to connect their browser game or their mobile game, or the other game you have somewhere else that connects to another blockchain. You could, I guess, get them to connect their Telegram username to that. So your status of your Telegram game can be reflected in the other game, but it just makes it much more sort of clunky, and it means obviously you couldn't basically have a Telegram game looking at someone's MetaMask wallet directly and bringing stuff in. You'd have to have all these workarounds. So it makes sense for Telegram and Tom. People were starting to do it. So some Immutable games were doing it, and some Ronin games, or at least one Ronin game was doing it. But it wasn't like, I think it was still sort of a little bit secondary. I think some of the buzz had come off using Telegram. So, I guess no one will be that disappointed. I've seen some people on Twitter who maybe sort of maybe playing up their sort of displeasure about it, but it wasn't like it's not like there's some massive game on Telegram that's linking out to, I don't know, Arbitrum, and now it has to stop. I mean, people were experimenting with this sort of stuff, so it sort of makes sense.
The main part of Web3 games still would be using Ton, and so in a sense, it's probably gonna strengthen Ton slightly. Whether it actually strengthens Telegram as a launchpad remains to be seen. I suppose not a launchpad distribution platform. But that leads us on nicely to talk about Line next, and its launch of what they call dapp, mini dapps.
Dapp store.
And the dapp portal in Line Messenger, which is sort of a similar messenger app platform such as Telegram, but it's operating in Asia, out of South Korea, and they launched their first mini dapps this week, actually yesterday, I think. Launched with 32 games. I think Slime Miner is the first one everyone's sort of talking about. There are obviously loads of other games as well. So Captain Tsubasa is one of them, and D Labs Games had 2 games, I think. One of them was Boxer 1 was part of the initial launch portfolio game.
Okay.
But they're aiming to have over hundreds of games. So did you say thousands? No, hundreds. Thousands even in 2025. So high ambitions there. But you've actually downloaded it. You can quite get it to work immediately. So of technical hiccups, but
yeah. I mean, so I did have Line. I don't really use Line. But I did have a Line account, and it was. I think it was, to be honest, it was more me than Line. But it just ended up being a very clunky experience to get the sort of, what they call it, the dapp. They call it the dapp store or something. Because basically, like all these things, it's a mobile messaging system, and then it's sort of loading, sort of firing up new HTML5 pages within this sort of app, which is the same for Telegram, to be fair, how they do it. But with Telegram, I mainly use it as a desktop app, so I guess there's a slight difference between desktop and mobile. But it was very sort of complicated, and I think the other thing is it asked me did I want to switch on to factor authentication, which I did, and then nothing happened, and then every time I wanted to do anything, it kept sending me a PIN number through the messaging system, so you're sort of flicking between it. So, bit of a mess. And even now I've got it to work. It's still, I'd say this is more them. It's still quite clunky in terms of how you access these things. I had a go at about sort of three games. Yeah, Slime Masters seemed to, it's like an idle mining game. Wasn't really impressed with any of them so far. They are giving away actually quite a lot. So the blockchain is called Kaia. I think pronounce it Kaia. And if you play all the games that they have this sort of opening promotion, opening sort of, it's not a weekend, but opening period of time promotion. And if you collect everything in there, it's about $100 worth of Kaia tokens. So it's not nothing. I mean, I don't know how long it would take you to go through all that sort of stuff, but they're obviously, it's a big deal for them. And I think for people who would be more adept at using Line, they'd probably just sort of swam through it all. And obviously the point really is, I think for these viral platforms is they're they're not expecting everyone to sort of go to the dapp store and have a look through and all that game looks interesting. I'll have a go. Obviously they're expecting it like me to go, oh, this Slime Masters is brilliant, and spam all my friends online saying, come and play Slime, and so they're getting a link and they're going straight into the game. So that's the virality. The virality bit is comes from the community. And I guess the quality of the games is just not very good because they've not had enough time to develop them, or they're porting them from other platforms or stuff. So we'll wait and see.
And it is mainly aimed at the existing sort of Line Messenger audience, isn't it? Encourage those users, not users like you who will have to go and then sign up for Line Messenger and so on. But look, I do hope it'll sort of be sorted, because Line Next had its initial project, Game Dozy, which sort of launched and didn't go very well in 2024. And so this is now sort of a complete rework of strategy, and that's why the Finchia, what's it called, the other net, the Finchia. No, and then the other Clayton. Yeah, those two merged to create this Kaia blockchain, which has been sort of custom designed for this sort of experience. So I don't know if they can get it to work. So let's move on. We've been looking this week at the Abstract chain, which is Pudgy Penguin's head company Iglo's blockchain, which is more than just a gaming blockchain. It's very sort of consumer focused. It's NFTs, it's games, it's social platforms and trading and so on. So a few games have already, I mean, this was only introduced in 2024, and it's got sort of more traction towards the end of 2024 when Pudgy Penguins launched their Pengu token. That's when people started talking a bit more about Abstract. And now quite a few games have sort of announced that they are going to build on Abstract, not necessarily exclusively, but they will expand to Abstract or deploy sort of only on that chain. But so we looked into which games. I mean, Abstract themselves announced this kind. I think it was 33 games on that list that they announced. So it's obviously Pudgy Penguin's own. What's it called? Pudgy World. They have another
Pudgy World and Pudgy Vibes trading card.
Yeah, and then what are the other ones? Togami, On-Chain Heroes. Quite a few, and then Sugar Town. Actually, that was the one I wanted to mention. They announced so Sugar Town from D20 Labs, kind of ex-Zynga's Web3 arm, which broke out from Zynga in 2024. Their Sugar Town platform with loads of different games, I think, eventually, but currently it's this Poker Nuts. Is it called Poker Nuts?
Royal Poker Nuts.
Royal Nuts Poker Club. Game. Yes, that is coming to Abstract. And whereas the Gigaverse one you mentioned, that's coming to Proof of Place, they're also launching on Abstract, I think. Yeah. Good. Anything else you want to say about that? No, let's move on. So we got Moku, the kind of native Web3 developer that's been building on Ronin. It's been building its Moku kind of HQ. What is it initially they had launched there? Let's have a look. It's like a questing platform. That's what they're sort of big on and been known for, doing these quests. And now they have launched, they call it the first fair launch due to everybody sort of being invited at the initial token launch without any exclusive sort of VIP deals for certain people and so on. So they're launching their token launchpad on Ronin, and it is called Tama Meme. Tell us about that, John. Clearly, knock it all.
So I mean, this wasn't launched permissionless, but obviously this is part of the whole thing around Ronin at the moment, which is it's going permissionless. So technically, you're actually not launching on the Ronin sort of main chain. You're launching on their ZK EVM sort of. Well, it's not a side chain. They're layer 2, I suppose. So obviously, there's a massive sort of momentum building up around lots of, anyone can now launch anything on Ronin. That will soon be the case. So we're starting to see the sort of some of those things actually go live on the main chain if because Sky Mavis knows those people. So to me, I'm really not super into meme coins. So I vaguely had a quick look at it and thought, yeah, great, more meme coins.
People are, John. It's been over 7,000 launched in like 2 days, I think.
Yeah, right. So 7,000, of these tokens have launched. Yeah, and in terms of for Sky Mavis and Ronin, it's sort of like, well, this is just more people spending RON tokens. This is more, this is sort of simple stuff. Everyone likes meme. The community likes meme coins. Presumably, some of these things will actually become a thing at least within Ronin. I don't think they'll be big outside of Ronin, but there's plenty of memes within Ronin. So when you talk about the fair launch thing, it is that whole sort of you spend a bit of RON to create it, and then you try and get all your mates to buy it, and then when it gets to a certain level of liquidity, it gets pushed onto the main Katana decks. And then becomes like a sort of a what do you call it, a graduated token, so like a proper token. And I think I can't remember, there were like 20 or so that sort of made it up there. The only one I thought was funny was instead of smooth love potion, there's one called hard love potion, but that was sort of funny for about a second. There's like, and then what but there are. I noticed actually the what was it called, the Philippine metaverse worker film that came out this week. Someone had created a token around that, and then you sort of think, that's some people will be, some people will want to become part of that community, or become, I own that coin. Obviously it wouldn't think a massive big coin, but you can sort of see that's a sort of positive thing, allowing those people to do that. So yeah,
in
and of itself, I don't say again.
I was going to say, once we're on the theme of tokens, we can move on to talk about the anime token.
Well, just before that. So the other thing I would say is much more interesting for me is the forecast prediction market, which is also one of these other gaming adjacent sort of apps coming from community gaming esports platform. So they've actually pushed their token launch back because they want to spend a bit more time on it. So it's actually not going live now till I think the 19th of February. I think the actual prediction market goes live. But for me, that's much more interesting. But again, it's sort of this extra utility that's coming to Ronin that and we're going to see sort of more of that. Most of it will be rubbish, as is always the case on any blockchain, but some of it will be sort of interesting, and obviously different things will appeal to different people. So I think it's definitely, that's be interested to see Ronin moving on from becoming like we're the best gaming chain to we are a sort of consumer focused sort of blockchain with a bunch of stuff on it.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then let's talk about your tokens that you've been given this week, airdropped.
Yeah.
Start with Azuki's anime token.
Yeah. So Azuki, one of the larger NFT collections. Back in the day, people probably forget now, it went through a bit of a FUD thing where one of the main guys involved had done loads of rugs and all this sort of stuff. So it did go through like a big sort of price collapse, and but they've managed to sort of they're certainly not a sort of perfect sort of not anything is, but it's they've built some sort of community around that. It was sort of one of the first ones to have this sort of Japanese style anime PFP sort of artwork. The artwork was quite nice, and they've done a few different collections since then, sort of sub collections. And then that's this anime token a long time ago. So they've been sort of building up to it, and to a degree, I suppose, waiting for legal and market conditions to allow. Not quite on the level of sort of a Pengu. So 55% of the total supply was dropped, you could claim yesterday. Obviously, most of it went to their existing community. They were, again, fairly generous to people who held other things. Particularly, they were dropping on the tokens on the Arbitrum blockchain. So if there was a whole bunch of stuff, if you'd done stuff on Arbitrum, you got an allocation. So I got about, originally it was $500 worth. The price is just, everyone's just clearly sold. So the price is sort of on the way down. There's no staking mechanic as far as I can see, or anything like that. You just sort of got the tokens and we'll sort of see what happens. So at the moment it's just sort of on the way down. Whereas sort of Pengu, which I don't think also doesn't have any staking mechanics. The token actually, even though that's a total meme coin, the token has sort of actually started going up again. So releasing a token is sort of good. It's good liquidity for the market, but it is also an interesting sort of indication of what, of where your project sits in terms of, do people, just sell it all? Do people keep it all? Do they sell half and move on? Or so I guess, Pudgy Penguins is definitely sitting up there as the sort of the obviously sort of the best the best performing NFT collection of last year, and people have kept that, maybe because they've got this abstract blockchain going live as well. People are thinking there's going to get an airdrop of that, whereas the anime one, I've not looked into the white paper, but
now is Pengu going to be the abstract kind of ecosystem token? No, it's not. Okay,
I wouldn't think
so, no. You know that for sure, do you?
Pretty much.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Well, Pengu is a meme coin, so meme coin is not, you're not going to use for gas or anything. I mean, potentially in the future they might do something with it, but I think it was just give away.
Okay. Good. Right, and the other token, obviously everyone's raving about today, that will be launched in not less than 2.5 hours, is InfiniGods God token.
Yeah.
So that's been sort of, people have been saying that this and that on the leaderboard. So tell us a little bit about how do you qualify for, how do you get eligible for this airdrop, and why does your ranking on the leaderboard matter in that sense?
Yeah, so InfiniGods God token is again one that has been sort of anticipation for it sort of rising throughout the year. So I think the US team, they've been around for a long time actually, and they put out 3 games. I mean, I played the first one I quite liked. It was very simple, called InfiniMerge, and they had some quite nice basic NFT sort of mint. It's almost like fractionalized NFTs, or I won't go into it all now. But anyway, there's some quite interesting stuff going on there. Then he did another game called I can't remember, Immortal Siege, I think, which I didn't play.
Yeah,
like a tower defense game. And then they've really doubled down on this King of Destiny, which is a sort of a bit like a sort of coin master, sort of Monopoly Go type. Well, not actually Monopoly Go at all, but
luck battle.
Yeah, they call it luck battler. So it's much more like Coin Master, where you're doing random stuff and spinning wheels and getting resources, then attacking other people. And Coin Master, massively successful Web 2 mobile game. And that game's been okay. What they've been good at is they've really connected with the KOLs who you would want to really, really jazz up the fact this is a project to make tons of money on. So those are our great friends, Grail and Dingaling, who happen to be in the top. One of them was number 1 and one was number 3 in the leaderboard. And obviously those are guys who not only have massive following, they also have tons of capital. So they bought, I can't remember which one of them kept going on about how many NFTs he had, but they had this old InfiniGods had this sort of old collection of NFTs. So they had 2 sets of passes, and there's also these things called Elder Gods, and they were particular sort of historic mythical gods NFTs that worked in a certain way in their first game, but they sort of became sort of utility NFTs for the wider collection, even though they had no input into Kings of Dynasty. Kings of Dynasty, is that what it's called? Yeah. So anyway, so these KOLs obviously collected all the NFTs. That they did a pre-sale round as well, so they all bought into the token at a cheap price, and they drummed up support, kept going on about it all the time. And that, if you can get those guys on side, and market conditions work out nicely, you just do really well out of it. So they did various play to airdrop things. They ran a really good campaign. They did, they've been quite well connected with other blockchain projects. So they've sort of pulled in other people from that into their own sort of community and their own events, and also the allocation of the God token as well. As it happens, because I long back in the day started playing the original games, I actually have some of the NFTs from when I was originally playing them. So
even I played Immortal.
Even you played, yeah. No,
InfiniMerge.
InfiniMerge. Yeah. I did like it as well. So I've not been involved in any of the play to airdrop things. So I've not ranked particularly sort of highly through that. I just have owned a couple of NFTs from way back in the day. I did do some of their social farming stuff, following people on Twitter, just to sort of see where I ended up. So I've ended up about five.
That's so far from anything I thought you'd ever do, John. Well done.
I didn't tweet anything out, which I could. So I didn't. I just sort of wondered how, because I had these NFTs, I got quite a good multiplier on anything I did. So if you just did them without the NFTs, it didn't really work out. But because I had these other old NFTs, I thought, I'll do it and see. So I've ended up 3,500 on the list. I don't think I'm going to, looking up, it's not like a big project like a Pudgy Penguin is going to be $1 billion value. It's just not, it's not a big enough game. In their white paper, they talk about AI agents and doing their own blockchain, but they're just not at that level of a proof of play. They're making some interesting games. Their original idea was interoperability, which hasn't really worked out. They've sort of maneuvered away a little bit from that. But they're a competent team. They've raised well in difficult conditions.
Yeah.
So we'll sort of we don't know. I don't know what the.
They're an Arbitrum, are they currently?
I don't know actually.
Migration in they own it, I think, to Arbitrum.
So, but again, it's just sort of funny that the you just get these sort of periods of time where there's stuff you did years ago or stuff you bought years ago that you just never could sell or on. It's a bit actually the same with the Azuki one. I just got some of that. I've never owned a Azuki, never been really interested in them, but just because I owned some. Actually, I think it was because if you owned some InfiniGods NFTs and did some Pirate Nation stuff, so it's just just a sort of random allocations of money. It just sort of comes about. So I think we are very much in that sort of era of crypto where stuff you did years ago suddenly, I won't be rich off any of this sort of stuff because I just didn't do enough of anything back then. But just one or two NFTs you own, you sort of get a couple of $100 of stuff, and and obviously the KOLs who really want to grind that stuff out and that's their lives can make. I think someone made the biggest holder on Azuki did like $1 million worth of something. So if you really want to go for it and your life is focused around that, then you can do obviously quite well out of that.
Good. So finally, today the game, as they rebranded, their official name I think was Today the Game. I was always a bit confused about that. But they started off as the game was called Today, and then to clarify things, they were called Today the Game. They are now called Youmio. I think that's how you say it, is it? Youmio, yeah. So this is sort of it's part of their AI vision, isn't it? That they're kind of moving. Not that that's. AI have always been part of their vision, but that's really been emphasized lately, isn't it? So that for their AI kind of agent launchpad. In kind of promoting that and marketing that, they've also chosen them to rename, and it's probably good because I sort of agree with you. I never thought Today is a very good name for a game. Youmio, I don't know, why is it called that? Do you know the sort of meaning? No.
Okay. Well, apart from the obvious one, the company is officially, I think, still the case. Probably maybe they changed it now. The company was called Mr. Kite. That was the company. Right. I guess from the Beatles song, I would think. And they were. I first spoke to them a couple of years ago when they sort of had the concept of Today as a game, and it was, as you say, it was. AI was always a part of it, but because the way we spoke about AI back then, we didn't really talk about AI agents in that way. It was much more about NPCs. There'd be these cool NPCs, and you own an island, and you build this island and the biome, and you'll sort of go to your other friends' islands, and it would be sort of social, a bit like not The Sims, because The Sims is very heavy duty, go to work and get a new fridge. It's not at that level, but a higher concept sort of version of The Sims with blockchain, and again they. Sort of, they were very much more focused on. So their NFTs are seeds. So it's very much sort of on the nature, the natural part of it, and the very, nice art style. It looked very different from other games, and even their NPCs back then were sort of odd. They were humanoid, but odd-looking humanoids, sort of very stylized. And one of the co-founders comes from the movie industry. He's actually won an Oscar for a short film and stuff. So sort of mixing sort of, they would say, mixing games and sort of high end sort of Hollywood sort of concepts. But then as this AI agent thing came in, because that just became a term in common use that wasn't in the back when they started out. Obviously, they were just like, well, AI agents. Of course, that's what we've been doing. So I think these two things collided. And as you say, it was always complicated to talk to Michael, who's the CEO, and to say, and your game today. And when he was in Spaces, he'd always have to say, yeah, today the game. And, because if you just say today, it doesn't have the context. So they end up with this sort of clunky today the game thing, which I never sort of liked. I'm sure they didn't like. So I guess at some point they were going to rebrand. And then as this AI agent stuff started coming around, they actually were quite quick to launch this agent called Limbo. And she's, I think, she's on Twitter like everyone else is. But originally she was like doing Twitch streams. And the idea was she's sort of this sort of, like they all are, this sort of sassy sort of female character. But she's supposed to be like a musician. So I think she can do singing. Like all these agents is a little bit clunky as they get closer to being human. You get the uncanny valley and the sort of the way they talk. The pause is not quite there. But anyway, I think she's one of the better ones, even within that caveat of not being terribly great. But then, say again.
Doesn't say much. That she's one of the ones.
But then obviously they have this tech in the background, and they've obviously been working on it, so it's not like they've just bolted something else on. I'm sure they're connecting to other stuff in the background, but equally they do have some expertise in this field that they sort of, in this rebrand, have sort of brought that sort of front and center of what they're doing. So they call the platform now Maestro, and the idea is, anyone can rock up and create their own AI agents, which obviously you were going to do in the game from the beginning as a player, but now they're sort of opening it out so you can do those and put them in other places. And they keep the same art style, so you're not really doing photorealistic sort of characters or anime. They're odd-looking characters, at least what the video that I've seen. I don't know whether they'll let you sort of plug any mesh in or anything like that. But it just sort of makes sense. I guess the interesting thing from a business point of view is when they launched this Limbo character, they also launched a token on Solana through Pump.Fund, which is the meme coin thing there. And of all those agent tokens that went live, it was a disaster. Everyone got really annoyed that the VCs had an allocation, and there's all this sort of FUD. Price went down, and it was the one token that didn't do well last year. But now they've sort of, because of all this rebranding stuff and just the AI agent meta is obviously continuing on. Now it's actually, and I was looking at it today, it's actually, I think, doubled yesterday. I mean, it's actually it's still quite a small market cap, as some of those AI agent coins are much bigger, but its performance now is actually quite solid as people sort of come on board and as they announce more stuff. And I think, obviously it is a rebrand. It's not a pivot because they had this in there, but it's a repositioning of what they were before. But it's not like some companies who just totally just like drop what they're doing and just say we're AI agents, and they, you sort of see the people who've gone through those, whatever the hot thing is, that's what they're experts in. It's not that level. Obviously, there's some degree of say repositioning on it. But I think and I guess with a lot of this AI agent stuff, in 6 months' time, we'll see who actually have good stuff that people are using and who have just wrapped ChatGPT. I don't think they've wrapped ChatGPT, and I think the game they're calling it now, Youmio Worlds, I think is what they're calling the game now. I think that will have a life outside of what happens with them trying to sell their agent tech as a third party thing. But but I agree with you. I'm not a massive fan of Youmio as a thing, but I think you just get used to it.
Good.
I say, obviously, when you're naming a company, trying to find things you can trademark and get the socials on, and you sort of have to. It's difficult. You either end up with a very long, complicated 3 words, or you making up sort of words.
Yeah, that's right. On a final note, and talking of AIs, we have the Mavens feature out this week, which industry experts basically discussing AI agents and the prospect of that, whether that will be sort of a sustainable trend, whether we'll see them hanging around 2025, make it into next year even, or whether it's one of those big trends now hyped up that will be dead in sort of 3 months' time, remains to be seen. So do go on our website, Blockchain Game Office, and find the Mavens feature with some insightful Yes. Yeah.
OpenAI are now calling them operators, so that's their term for them.
AI agents are called operators.
They've launched this new thing called operators, and it has its own browser, so it can do things within the browser. So you can,
It could be confusing because there are human operators, aren't they?
There's human agents, aren't there? I suppose.
All right. Okay. On that note, let's say bye-bye, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you for listening.